Now, given the number and the scale of our nation's challenges, this November's election will have particular consequence. It will be a defining event. President Obama and I have very different visions for America, both of what it means to be an American today and what it will mean in the future. The voters will expect each of us to put our respective views on the table. We'll each make our case, buttressed by our life experience. The voters will hear the debates, they will be buffeted by advertising, and they will be informed by your coverage. And hopefully, after all of that, they'll have an accurate understanding of the different directions we would take and the different choices we would make. Of course, for that to happen, the candidates have to be candid about their views and their plans. And in that regard, President Obama's comments to President Medvedev are deeply troubling. That incident calls his candor into serious question. He doesn't want to share his real plans before the election, either with the public or with the press. By flexibility, he means that what the American public doesn't know won't hurt him. His intent is on hiding. You and I are going to have to do the seeking. Now, President Obama's exchange with the Russian president raises all sorts of serious questions. What exactly does President Obama intend to do differently once he's no longer accountable to the voters? Why does flexibility with foreign leaders require less accountability to the American people? And on what other issues will he state his true position only after the election is over? But instead of answering those vital questions, the president came here yesterday and railed against arguments no one is making and criticized policies no one is proposing. It's one of his favorite strategies, setting up straw men to distract us from his record. And while I understand the president doesn't want to run on his record, he can't run from his record either. Now, I've said many times before, the president did not cause the economic crisis, but he did make it worse. He delayed the recovery, and he made it anemic. When he took office, millions of Americans looked to him to turn around the economy and to lead us back to full employment. He failed these Americans. The first three rules of any turnaround are focus, focus, and focus. But instead of focusing his attention on the economy, he delegated the stimulus to Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid. The $787 billion stimulus included a grab bag of pet projects that had languished in Congress for good reason for years. It was less a jobs plan and more the mother of all earmarks. The administration pledged that their stimulus would keep the unemployment rate below 8%. It has been above 8% every month since. The president's attention, it was elsewhere, like a government takeover of health care and apologizing for America abroad. He handed out tens of billions of dollars to green energy companies, including his friends and campaign contributors at companies like Solyndra that are now bankrupt. President Obama's answer to our economic crisis was more spending, more debt, and larger government. And by the end of his term in office, he will have added nearly as much public debt as all the prior presidents combined. No president has ever run $1 trillion deficit. The new normal the president would have us embrace is $1 trillion deficits and 8% unemployment. Through all of this, President Obama has failed to even pass a budget. In February, he put forward a proposal that included the largest tax increase in history and still left our national debt spiraling out of control. And the House rejected it unanimously. Of course, no fiscal challenge is greater than the one we face with entitlements. As the president himself acknowledged 3 years ago, this is not a problem that we can kick down the road any further. I'd be willing to consider the president's plan, but he doesn't have one. That's right. 3.5 years later, he has failed to enact or even propose a serious plan to solve the entitlement crisis. Instead, he has taken a series of steps that end Medicare as we know it. He is the only president to ever cut $500 billion from Medicare. And as a result, more than half of doctors say they will cut back on treating seniors. He's destroying Medicare Advantage, eliminating the coverage that millions of seniors depend on, and reducing choice by 2/3 in the program. To control Medicare costs, he has created an unelected, unaccountable panel with the power to prevent Medicare from providing certain treatments. The result, of course, will be fewer treatments and services available to patients and nowhere else for them to turn. A couple of months ago, we saw a fascinating exchange on Capitol Hill that epitomized not only this administration's inaction on entitlements, but also its appalling lack of leadership. Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner testifying before Congress, Congressman Paul Ryan, who, by the way, unlike the president, has had the courage to offer serious solutions to the problems we face, he was pressing Geithner on the administration's failure to lead on entitlement reform. And Geithner's response was this: "We are not coming before you today to say we have a definitive solution to that long-term problem. What we do know is we don't like yours." Take a moment. Think about that. We don't have a solution. All we know is we don't like yours. It almost makes one long for the days when the president simply led from behind. And now, in the middle of the weakest economic recovery since the Great Depression, the president purports to have experienced a series of election year conversions. As president, he has repeatedly called for tax increases on businesses. Now, as candidate Obama, he decides that a lower corporate tax rate would be better. As president, he's added regulations at a staggering rate. Now, as candidate Obama, he says he wants to find ways to reduce them. As president, he delayed the development of our oil and coal and natural gas. Now, as candidate, he says he favors an energy policy that adopts an all-of-the-above approach. Nancy Pelosi famously said that we would have to pass Obamacare to find out what was in it. President Obama has turned that advice into a campaign strategy. He wants us to re-elect him so we can find out what he'll actually do. With all the challenges the nation faces, this is not the time for President Obama's hide-and-seek campaign. President Obama has said he wants to transform America. I don't want to transform America. I want to restore to America the values of economic freedom and opportunity and small government that have made this nation the leader it is. It is opportunity that has always driven America and defined us as Americans.